So, um, what is the rationale behind shutting down the gym in New Jersey where the um, owners were actually arrested and they're being fined $15,000 a day? The owner of that gym stated that since June they've had 72,000 people. They haven't had one fatality, and there hasn't been one COVID case traced to the gym. They do not require masks, which is, and you realize that's where the game is coming from. They have an imperative, a deep seated imperative to demand fealty. It's much more than it's much more than a matter of it's much more than a matter of they want to control or they want to do this or that. It's a matter of their agenda requires people to be comfortable, comfortable with the idea. And, you know, Abu Hussein says that the protests and the racism they're fighting is a matter of life or death. It's a life or death matter. That's what she said. Now, there's no proof that George Floyd was killed because he's black. In fact, there's some evidence that he wasn't necessarily killed specifically because of the knee and the neck, but that it was also that there was some issues with some drugs he had taken and a medical condition that he'd had. There's no question that black people are subjected to deferential policing. But again, you have to break down why that is. There's a number of different reasons. Black folks, again, were more likely to be poor. You have white people who join the police force who have a various myriad of different issues with black folks. It's a job that it's not the highest paying job, let's be honest. It's a often thankless job. And we often blame the police for everything that goes wrong. But interestingly, why did that situation occur? It's because the clerk or whoever was working called the police and said George Floyd was acting erratically. Had that person not made that call, this wouldn't happen. And this is an interesting thing because the COVID 19 shamers are now cheering when they see a white woman being carted off in handcuffs for opening a salon, or when they see the white woman who got arrested in the Ohio football game, they're cheering that. The white people are cheering that, and there's some of the woke black folks who cheer it too, because it proves to them, yeah, finally white people are getting theirs. Utterly stupid, and it's actually not pro-black, because I don't feel any safer. It doesn't put money in my pocket to see white women be forced to suffer at the hands of cops. If you And the idea that you're protesting the cops, but then you want the cops to enforce mask mandates and shutdowns and closings, because in the end, the only way to stop a business from staying open is if the cops come and arrest the owner. Because they cannot pay the fine, you know. I guess you can ask the electric company to shut them down, but that there's some legal matters with that. I've talked to a couple lawyers, and that's not as easy as they want to, that causes a lot of problems when you talk about they haven't been convicted of anything. And once you start doing that kind of stuff, you start heading to China. So they don't really want to call their electric company and start getting that's not in their business. The electric company, if you pay your electric bill, then it's still a police matter because the police can ask people to shut power off or whatever when it comes to a felon. But in the end, you need the police. So you have this movement that is exonerating millions of people getting together in a manner that they decried as being selfish and being a detriment to the public health. And yet, they're advocating a policy that requires more police involvement. So you have, on the one hand, people who are embracing a defund mentality, which is we want the police to be out of social work. We want the police to be out of domestic violence. We want the police out of all these things. Yet you're now engaging in a process that would require the police to be more proactively involved in our life, in our society. Of the first 40 arrests that were for social distancing in New York City, 35 of them were black folks. Brooklyn is only about 36, 38% black from what I could see. And there's that number again, around 2.5 times more, roughly 2.5 times more of the population that was black was accounted for the social distancing arrests. I looked like Brooklyn was around 30-some% white, maybe more than that. I don't know. It looks like it was a little bit more than that. Only 2.5%, but one white person was arrested, and there were no prosecutions. People go, oh, look, they didn't prosecute him. That makes it a lot worse. Well, I mean, if none of them were prosecuted, why are you arresting them in the first place? You know what I'm saying? And so, of course, the people who supported reopen are like, hey, wait a minute, dude. Hold on. You gotta help us out. You are making the case, you're making the case that our desire to be open is a threat to this society. That we are we monsters for wanting to go to our bars. We're monsters to want to go to the beach. We're monsters for trying to go to the park. We're not even talking about indoors, Well, let's talk about indoors. We are bad guys and selfish and killers for wanting to go to church. But you're watching the streets teeming wall to wall with people, shoulder to shoulder. And you say that's not causing the spread. Here's the problem. If that's the case, why shut down Mardi Gras? And they almost lost the COVID-19 thing almost won. And this is chilling because if you look at the numbers, they were dropping to the point where there would have been no way to justify what's happening right now if they had maintained it. And that is what's concerning a lot of people. We'll go through some of the numbers. Reopening week was around May 3rd. 7-day rolling average for cases was 28,846. On May 25th, it was 22,590. On June 17th, it was 24,425. A modest increase. But from about that point, you would see a steady increase to an apex of 69,638 on July 21st. Now, the protests were raging on from May 26th through that period, all the way through the summer. And so what you're seeing is from the day of the protest to July 21st, you're talking about a 185.1% increase in less than 2 months. Now, I'm not a big advocate of PCR testing as being a reliable basis for understanding the coronavirus progression. But in the context that metric is the common standard in reporting this issue, clearly something happened to dramatically increase the level of infection before Memorial Day. Because before Memorial Day, the level of infection had been dropping, and it had been dropping modestly but noticeably. I mean, you're talking about, you know, close to a 20% decrease in 7-day rolling average. When you look at fatalities, um, it's even more dramatic. You're talking about, you're talking about at the height, May 2nd, you're talking about rolling average of um 2,413 a day. 7-day rolling average for COVID-19 fatalities. By May 26th, it had dropped to 1,044. So you're talking about, um, you're talking about a really steep drop in a short period of time. You know, and by June 10th, 3 weeks after that, it was still dropping to 835. Now, the apex of fatalities at that period, as the protests are raging on, is 1,168. Now, because of contract tracing, you know, it's been a failure. It's really difficult to identify where positives come from because PCR positives last far beyond the contagious periods. But the CDC did identify that their test showed that the largest group that was increasing these infection numbers were people under 30. This is the group that is